How does that look for everybody? Is that all good?
One sec.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay.
Well, that's some imagery.
I'm sorry. I wasn't expecting that. Making some bands by my lonely.
Default Soup, yes, our YouTube memberships are still on sale. 0% off. Thank you for reminding everybody. Bill
Nice.
Bunter, thank you for joining the student tier. We super appreciate having you around. If we can't be monetized, at the very least, we can have channel memberships. So thank you very much, Bill Bunter.
Great username as well.
It's an excellent username.
Ba, ba, ba.
Jack
All right, I'm
78
ready
says he's
when
already
everybody else
interested.
This is gonna be our main character of today.
I am gonna grab a soda real quick. I'll be right back.
No worries.
You can get started.
Okay. Actually, no, I can't because this first slide is very important.
It looks like
He'll never understand the true story, and he's here for it. But
This requires Skipty's undivided attention.
He looks like he's about to go on a hero's journey.
oh, he is.
He looks sad as fuck. This is like the Bugs Life sequel we never got.
I mean, this is definitely a Bug's Life. This is definitely this doesn't turn out.
Have you ever
amazingly.
looked into how many movies there are, just kids movies that just feature ants?
Oh, there's Ants, there's the Ant Bully, there's Bugs Life. I don't know any others. Those are, like,
What
the
is
three off
what
the
is
top of my head.
the kid who finds like the hidden tiny people? Not Arietti, the other one.
I believe no. I know what you're talking about.
I know. Yeah.
Isn't there like a Lucasfilm? Isn't Lucasfilms? Or am I thinking something
Something
else?
like that. It's like the hidden world or something. Oh, why am I blanking on it?
No,
the
I'm looking it up.
articles or something? I
No
remember
clue.
he gets shrunk down.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
for a
that's
telescope
the one I'm
and-
thinking of.
Yeah. All right. We ready,
Anyway.
everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello. Today I'm going to introduce you to Jose. Jose
Whoa.
is a male ant, specifically a Argentine ant. Right? This is going to get deep. You see, unlike most societies, ants predominantly have a majority matriarchal society, meaning the ladies take charge. And as soon as Jose was born, his life was set in stone. As soon as he saw his genitals, actually, because his only great purpose in life was to give the queen the seed.
Can I pause just one quick second? It is confirmed
Nice.
that my father is in the chat right now, and I'm so sorry.
Hell yes.
Continue.
Hell yes.
Ant time.
Yeah, so male ants are kind of like simps for the queen. They'll do essentially anything for her. And their entire purpose in existence is to get the queen to notice them.
Did you make that graphic? Did you
No,
find
I
that
didn't.
online?
I found it, and if I find something, it means that I'm correct.
That's brilliant.
You see, ant society is kind of split into three groups. You know, you've got the female ants who are like the majority workers. Who joined us?
Dag27, he cannot speak, but he can listen live, which is a feature.
Oh.
Which is a feature, in fact, of being a channel member. As long as you're a part of our YouTube, or as long as you're a part of our Sir Swag Academy Discord, you can listen live and be in the audience in real time.
Whoa.
Hello,
I didn't know that was a thing.
27.
forgot
you
made it that
Sorry,
way.
Dak 78, not Dak 27. You're one of our OGs. I'm sorry for getting your name wrong. I'm so sorry.
Welcome, Deck 78. Was Deck 77 taken? That's my only question.
Where are the other 77 DACs?
Yeah. Anyway, so female ants do all the work. They essentially build shit and hunt for food and, you know, all that cool stuff. The males are literally only there for one thing, and that's to get the queen to like pump out all the eggs, which is an accurate representation. And you're probably all wondering, like, Krusty, why are we talking about ants? This seems very off-brand for you. And I would say on the contrary, because our societies are highly linked in many ways. You see, without even noticing, we are currently in a full-scale, multi-faction global armed conflict on a scale never seen before in history. All right, and honestly, I don't know where to really start with this topic, but we're gonna start with Jose. You see, Jose belongs to the Argentine faction. What sets them apart from a lot of other factions of ants is that, like, God decided that he wanted to buff their spawn rate, and like it kind of got out of hand. You see, they spawn really quickly, and it's kind of had an international impact. And sure, we're talking about ants, and it's not exactly the most interesting topic ever, but I thought what attracts the American audience more than anything, and that is taxpayer dollars and adding a Subway Surfer clip to the side of the presentation.
Yes.
I was almost tempted to keep this for the entire presentation, by the way. I thought the joke would have gone too far.
Maybe. Well, we can put it in the official video.
Yeah,
I'll
just have it
presentation.
somewhere on screen.
Yeah. But the taxpayer dollar thing is pretty real, and I'm about to like drop a factoid to you guys, because this little fucker costs the American taxpayer $3 billion a year.
Nice.
Wait a minute. I think I know where this is going as well. I'm not going to say anything this time because I'm not going to ruin 2 in a row.
No, I wouldn't say ruin. If you can predict it, well, I'll just let him continue.
Yeah.
Let him cook.
Yeah. So now that I have your attention, I'll explain the landscape of the great international Argentine coalition, or as others have called it, World War Ant.
I still don't know where this is going.
So we're back with Jose again. Jose was born in 1600s Argentina. As a male, he prepares his life to essentially give the queen a good time. Just to give you a rough estimate, like general overall idea of what the Argentine kingdom or faction looks like. So this is probably like around their territory, the 1600s. Pretty big, taking a lot of South America up. Now, the thing about the Argentine species, as I mentioned, was that they populate quite a lot. And they have like one really special ability, is they're one of the, I wouldn't say few species, but they're really unique in the sense that they can have lots of queens at the same time. So multiple colonies have like many, many queens. And this has kind of like led to the mass population that we see. But, you know, the devs thought about that and they came up with a solution. And this, you see, because there's so many queens and essentially so many mothers to so many different colonies, genetic mutations were pretty common. And so, like, you know, you'd get like a slightly bigger head or smaller butt or whatever. All right. You see, Jose is very racist.
Okay.
Oh, no.
If he sees a different type of Argentine ant, which is his species, by the way, he attack other Argentine ant. I mean, he will kill it. Even if he's like, you know, slightly darker, slightly lighter, slightly more red, slightly more brown, you know, he's gonna be killing it. They're incredibly hyper aggressive. Essentially within their own faction, which is quite strange for an ant species. And so this has kind of led for millions of years being like a massive global civil war, essentially, in South America. Think of, a Horus Heresy scenario.
I'm still over here scratching my chin and wondering, is this presentation really just going to be about ants?
Yes.
Oh, you wait, baby, because this is where because everything changed one day. Everything changed one day when boats arrived to South America.
And there were ants on the boats.
And there are ants on the boats. Jose.
No, really?
Is doing his thing in his colony, just kind of walking around, chilling, vibing, checking the queen's vibe. and they were in some tree or whatever. But all of a sudden, guy cuts down his tree. Then his trees then put on a boat and sailed across the Atlantic. So Jose is not really concerned about this because all he cares about is his queen. He makes it to a port in some place called Spoon, Pain. I don't know. I don't really speak Ant. So Jose and his crew do what is expected when arriving to the New World as an Argentine ant. Essentially expand and conquer.
As ants do.
As ants do. So let me explain ant politics really quickly. Ants, like I said, don't like other ants. Think Imperium of Man with like Xenos. This is essentially the situation we've got here. Like life, what is that? Like if another faction is seen very close by, like if it's just another ant, like a war, well, pick it off. Like any sort of other ant species, like they're just walking by the nest. They see that one ant, they will essentially annihilate that species off the planet. And we're going to skip some time. Jose gets to finally fulfill his dream of giving his queen the suck. And his purpose has finally concluded. But we're going to skip over a lot of time now. We're talking Jose's great. We're just going to call him Jose Jr.
Yeah,
Easy enough.
The 27th junior.
Yeah. Jose Jr. is a citizen of the Argentine Confederation Empire.
Dude, they made some fucking conquest.
Yeah,
They're making some gains.
obviously through trade and all that stuff. They managed to create the world's largest ant empire in history, stretching across every continent, with its European territories being the largest interconnected colony system ever recorded. Now, you might be asking, how is this possible, considering there was that whole racism thing? Well, you see, the queen ants that were shipped off to specific areas tended to be quite close and genetically. So when they arrived in, let's say, Spain, North America, Australia, and they spread, they were quite early on in the whole genetic mutation thing. So they haven't really genetically changed much. So they were able to kind of just unite and spread and have similar genetic features and stuff like that. Now, I'm unaware of any research done on how European Argentine ants view Australian Argentine ants, but I'm confident enough to say that they probably hate each other. But locally in their regions, they're united, and I guess united in their genocidal intent across the planet.
Right.
Why do they matter to you, the American taxpayer?
If I could pause you for just a second, this reminds me of a really stupid question I ask myself a lot, which is, do you think that people in Spain and people in Mexico speak the same Spanish? Do you think that Argentinian ants in Australia and Argentinian ants in Spain speak the same ant language?
No, obviously not.
No. Look at them. They're slightly different color ant.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So how does this matter to you, the American taxpayer or Australian taxpayer? Well, you see, when I say ant societies are similar to our societies, I mean it. And you see, the Empire managed to move up the Civ 5 tech tree. I don't know if they built the Great Library or something,
If
but they
you're about
managed
to tell me the
get
answer in the Bronze Age, I'm gonna freak out.
well, their investment on their Civ 5 tech, free tech upgrade was essentially animal husbandry, right? When they arrived to the America,
I think you mean animal husbandry.
When they arrived in North America, they managed to get addicted to this thing called honeydew. This shit is like opium for them. And the the ants were like made a deal with the aphids because aphids secrete honeydew, and we're like, okay, you keep supplying this good shit, and in return, you get our protection. So they guard these aphids and suck the honeydew off their backs, kind of like cattle, with milk, essentially. You cook the meth for me kind of deal, we protect you. And not only do these fuckers protect the aphids, right? They actively move them around to better locations for food, because the more food they eat, the more aphids, yada, 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 more honeydew. And aphids eat honey sap. Not honey sap, sorry, plant sap in general. And this normally comes from, you get it, plants or crops. And because they don't have any natural predators or, anything attacking them, they can just go full ham on eating all the crops, which leads to obviously failed crops. And so a lot of farmers around the world are losing all their crops because this little fucker thought farming was like a good idea and started doing it themselves. Right? Truly a highly sophisticated, developed society, hell-bent on world domination and the potential to collapse human society. But don't be frightened, because we have a contender. The ancient arch nemesis of the Argentine ant.
Please tell me it's the Argentine ant.
Funny, okay, that might come up later, but no, not for this moment. But this is where things get a bit fucky-wucky. You see, nothing's really special about Jose Jr. He's pretty small. He isn't poisonous. He doesn't really have many fascinating features about him, but there's a whole lot of him. And so let me break down the ancient war doctrine of Jose Jr. He sees other ant, let's say an army ant. Now, army ants pretty big. They're strong, they're fast, and they carry a pair of katanas on them. So what does Jose Jr. do about this? Well, he throws himself at the army ant. And so does Jose Jr. 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, and 10, and 20, and 50, and 100, and 1,000, and 1,000,000. And, you kind of get the picture. The endless waves of Jose Jr.'s throwing their lives away for their beloved queen, who definitely is not an identical twin to the other queens. She's different, guys, I promise. So who are these contenders that I just mentioned earlier? These rivals. You see, this is where, in the 20th century, something weird happened in the American Argentine colony. The Fire Nation showed up. Meet Matthias.
The fire ants.
The Matthias is, yes, a fire ant. Specifically a red imported fire ant. He comes from the Fire Nation, also from South America, ancient rivals to the Argentine ant. And what was funny was when I did research and trying to find pictures of the fire ant, it kind of shows you how bad these guys are when the first images I found was literally the official Texas state asshole, and the red ant versus good ant, kind of ideal. But they decided that they wanted to take a good hard hit with this whole imperialism thing, because they thought the Argentine ants were doing a good job with it. So they decided to make their own empire. This the Great Fire Nation.
Jesus.
The sun will never set on the Fire Nation.
Yeah. They showed up essentially on the South Shores of the United States a few decades ago, and managed to kind of take up all the Dixie territories. And their front lines stretch over Europe, Australia, Japan.
Who made these maps?
I did.
Yes.
But there is a website called, I think it's called Ant. What is it called? I need to find it. I can't find it. But there's there's a website that tracks ant like discoveries, or like when people have seen a specific species of ant.
Of
and
course
you can,
there
like,
is.
you could essentially map it out, draw lines and stuff, and then so this is where they've kind of ended up.
Zelotat in the chat says ant versus termite is one of my favorite nature beefs. I don't know if these ants do the same thing, but ants and termites will do this thing where they're so pissed at each other, but they need to coexist that they'll form like ranks next to each other where there's just a DMZ between the two colonies.
Like ants, like majority of ants in the world are like somewhat at a species war against termites. But the internal ant conflicts are also as massive and great. They're pretty big.
Also Amistad,
yeah.
welcome to the student tier. Thank you so much for joining.
Nice.
I don't know if I mentioned him yet.
Oh yeah. So we need to focus on America. So in the American front, where they're battling the Argentine ants. This is kind of what the front line looks like. Now, I want to be clear. It's very hard to like draw a hard line of where these ants are because they kind of interlock with each other, and like some ants will show up on parts of another ant's territory and things like that. But generally, the average like territory of these ants is essentially the South invading the North.
Classic.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and we're talking about a war that is causing around 30 million casualties a year. And
Ant casualties.
And casualties. So
and some human.
maybe some starving humans, maybe. And like to us, they're just ant wars, but to these ants, this is like full on like Warhammer 40k shit. And a perfect example of this is a case study of the Battle of San Diego.
The Battle of
the Battle of San Diego is like currently like the fucking Melevon Creek like situation for ants. Okay, this is some like insane shit. Essentially, they've dug in a constant brutal campaign, and the Argentine ants are trying their best to defend the city from the Fire Nation's attacks. It is literally. I was just reminded of this fucking cinematic. This is essentially what's going on in San Diego for ants right now.
This is when I get my microscope out and I see the ants battling in San Diego. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is like a horde upon horde of ants like attacking each other. So how does the Fire Nation like take on the Argentine ant? Well, you see, the Argentine ants like outnumber the Fire Nation quite a lot. However, Fire Nations still have like a few advantages. Like they're quite powerful. You could probably compare them to like a space marine in a sense, compared to the Argentine ant, because they have venom and some sharper the sharply pointy parts of the ant. They've got a few weapons on them that they can use. And in fact, their venom that they can bite with is strong enough to kill most rodents and lizards, and even humans.
Pictured a normal human.
Not this bit's not graphic. Don't worry. But if you're a bit like squeamish, this like this is kind of what happens when you get bit by a bunch of fire ants. Yeah, they're nasty, very very nasty people. These guys are incredibly aggressive. So like in a way, they're using chemical weapons against their enemies. I mean, I don't know if the ants have ever signed any Geneva Convention but we'll actually come back to that later.
The Geneva Conventions.
You know what's unrelated but crazy? Like as I was doing we were listening to the presentation, my girlfriend, who's also watching, just texted me and said, "Oh, this reminds me, I almost got killed by fire ants when I was a kid." Like, legitimately, like that picture you showed is probably somewhat similar. So I was
gonna say your girlfriend's a casualty of war.
Yeah, when I made it earlier. Oh God. Anyways.
Yeah, so with a single fire ant infantry, they may struggle against a horde of Argentine ants, but a squadron of fire ants could probably do the trick. So the Battle of San Diego. I'm gonna kind of be a battle analyst for a second. So in the north part of San Diego, in this little area here, we see an attempted push into the city.
Krusty? Krusty.
Yes,
Who made these maps?
I made these.
He is an ant war scholar.
So the fire ants attempted to push from Lake Hodges, creating a supply chain for their river camps up north, because there's a small little river that goes along that highway you see in the center. But it turns out there was a problem because the Argentine ants managed to encircle the fire ants. However, some have rumored that negotiations between one of the queens of the Argentine ants' daughters has questioned the purity of her mother. And this has kind of led
William
to a
Ant Spear over here.
This has kind of led to a Argentine ant versus Argentine ant dispute. I mean, during this encirclement, she started disobeying her mother's orders and forming her
ant colony.
No shit.
I think she might relate more to her like darker red unknown father rather than her a bit more light red mother. Sort of. I just kind of couldn't help myself.
Memes.
Yeah.
Fully loaded.
So breaking news. We have some live leak footage of the frontline current conditions. We go to Steve, our ant correspondent, for some more information. Oh, I forgot. Ants don't speak. I'm sorry.
He is speaking. We just can't understand.
Yeah. So yeah, to us, like I mentioned before, ant combat isn't that interesting. But essentially to them, it is literally hell on earth.
Half of this presentation is just you saying, believe me, to them, it's nuts. It's nuclear warfare down there.
Unreal.
Oh, yeah. We have breaking news. There's been a Fire Nation counterattack.
Oh,
Who documented this?
They managed to break out of their encirclement. And as we speak, they're attempting to encircle the Argentine ants in the south around Felictica Park. Whatever.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest with you. This is a bit of an dramatization of the conflict. But it is an actual conflict. And it is like in somewhat happening. Like I said, it's very hard to gather front lines for ants because they don't really do that. But if you go to the city and you just, walk on a pavement or whatever, and you see a bunch of ants coming out of their nests, it is most likely some sort of battle going on. Now you might be wondering, what do the other ants think about this?
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, the rest of the ants must just be seeing this go what the fuck, or just chilling. Like what I said before, ants in general are pretty genocidal. You know how I mentioned chemical warfare in Finland earlier.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you noticed in the map there was this weird enclave of the fire ant that's just in Finland. And when they reached there, they sort of came across a new faction in the south. A new foe has appeared. The third faction to the story. So this is Formica sanguini. And I call this faction... I call this faction the Slavers Guild.
Oh my god.
Now you're probably wondering why I've called this a Slavers Guild. These ants have slaves and make slaves, not for their own species. In fact, their colonies of slaves works in the sense that you'd have one queen per colony, a couple of thousand slaver units, which are just like their own species, but female, lesser species of it, and then you would have millions upon millions of multi-ethnic slaves, essentially, sort of like a slave pyramid scheme in a way.
But with ants.
But with ants. And how do they acquire these slaves, you may ask? Well, slaver ants are kind of a parasite. They literally cannot survive without slave labor. And so this is how they do this. The queen will walk out of her nest and go find another species nest. And then she'll essentially pee on herself. She'll pee everywhere. Somewhat like a drunk uni flatmate who's just, gone through 3 bottles of Jaeger and has come home missing the toilet completely. Other ants in the colony who see this are slightly intimidated by this, as anybody would be, and decide to kind of keep their distance. And then she makes it her way to the other colony's queen, covered in the stench of her own piss. But the other queen,
This is a power move, is what this is.
Yeah, it's a power move. Yeah, and then she goes and kills the queen.
Damn.
And then this is the gore warning, by the way.
Wait, this or the next slide?
The next slide.
Okay.
She rips apart her
Krusty, no!
the upper queen.
No, Krusty!
Oh my god.
She rips apart her the other queen and covers her body in all her body parts in liquids and things like that, while all the other ants of the colony just look in shock and horror. Walks out and doesn't elaborate further. The ultimate disguise. The other ants watching this in real time are completely fooled by this talented masquerade.
Wait.
They then follow her queen, the queen, to the other colony, where they now work, protect, and essentially breed with this new queen. Sometimes the queen gets so much into her RP that she'll actually think she's one of the ants she's enslaved.
What? She really is from House Atreides, for real.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes it is pretty funny. Sometimes there'll be slave revolts, and sometimes the queen ants, big super hybrid baby slaver ants, we can tell this is a high diverse society, but this is straight out of a Dune plot where the queen will betray her own kind for the people, the natives that she's just enslaved.
The queen goes native.
Yeah. So where do they kind of fit in this whole overall conflict? From my understanding, there isn't really much contact between the two of them. The slaver ants are kind of more into the whole making slaves, getting them to give them food, and also making them work for essentially money or ant money. But then how did they get so big? Well, it was kind of an accident. They didn't really mean to expand it.
It does appear that they're mostly in the north. They're in Russia and the Nordic countries and Canada.
Yeah, they mostly they kind of the cooler areas of the world. But yeah, they're found pretty much in a lot of the northern hemisphere. As for the tens of thousands of other species, why aren't they on this list of ant species that I'm discussing today? Well, they're all kind of all at war with each other, but just on a much smaller scale. We really want to only talk about the empires that succeeded internationally. Though, there are some honorable mentions, the doorhead ant, which it's
That's entire enemy.
Bonk.
Spoilers, but yes, this entire species is dedicated to blocking ant nests, essentially. And yes, They did make a Elden Ring NPC a real thing. But yeah, as a general overlook of the conflict, this is like I said, multi-continental conflict, which this is the general borders, I guess, of the kind of sightings of these ants. And where those hashes are generally where you'd probably find some conflict if you just look in the ground and see an ant's nest. Multinational conflict which spans for decades and probably centuries to come. And I'm no expert, but I'm going to put my 2 cents on this, on who's going to win this great war. The Fire Nation appears to be doing well in North America, on the American front. They have the numbers to keep going, while having the advantage of low mutation in the long term, which will be the Argentines' downfall. While I think the Argentine faction is too big to be invaded or conquest, I believe their mass populations will eventually lead to mutations and civil war, as we've seen before in the U.S. conflict. Europe will be probably their most important domain. However, it's only a matter of time before mutations begin and the civil war sparks. Their probably best hope is Australia and Africa, as it's pretty early on in their mutation cycle, and so they could probably hold enough ground to essentially form a ant society, and maybe they start an ant civil rights movement and sign the Geneva Conventions.
Tommy Maxey in the chat just said, when do we get to the part about Archdute Ants Ferdinand? Is it before or after the Fire Nation?
Yeah. Where do I see this going? Well, let's hope that the ants learn to accept their differences in the future. I hope one day that all sorts of ants can come together and be peaceful. I have a dream that little baby red ant can play with little baby darker red ant. I have a dream that male Argentine ants can be treated like women Argentine ants. And I have a dream that Jose Jr. and Matthias can come together and put down their arms and unite for a better world for ants. Thank you.
Damn.
Applause.
Yeah, wait. We have a sound effect for that. Where is it? Woo, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Krusty, that was by far the most in-depth presentation I've ever seen about international ant border wars.
Yeah, I think I had discussed it slightly with Colin when I was in the US last, and
I do recall.
You've been thinking about this for that long?
Yeah,
I had to research it.
Yeah, no, I was kind of fascinated. Like, essentially, I heard about the Battle of San Diego. I was like, this can't be a real thing. And then it kind of fell down a rabbit hole of like an imperial system, a war that spans continents.
You just started looking further and further back, looking for where it would start.